Vega, Vega, Vega. Probably the most hyped PC product of anything this year. And when it landed a couple of months ago, I got my hands on the liquid cooled edition. I ran my tests and it was very similar to a 1080 with much better thermals, but its price put it outside the realms of possibility for most people. So what about something that's a little bit more reasonable and something that's a little bit more mainstream? This is the ASUS Strix edition of the Vega 64, and the graphics card is quite similar to some of the other high-end ASUS cards we'd seen, as the Strix edition hasn't really changed that much. We've got a 2.5 slot design, so make sure you've got room for it in your case, 3 fans, and then a very strong metal backplate. This also has some RGB lighting in it as well, so if you want to make your system look very light and bright, you can do that. In terms of I/O, on the left hand side we've got a DVI, 2 HDMI 2.0s and then 2 display ports. And then on the right hand side of the card you've got 2 fan headers and an RGB header as well. Both things are very nice to have, and the fan headers in particular means that your fans can spin up in relation to your graphics card speed rather than your CPU. The card is very big and beefy in every stretch of the word though, because it has 2 8-pin power connections on the front, which means that yes, this is going to consume a lot of power, especially when you compare it to the 1080 that has a lower TDP and thus is going to be cheaper to run, and assuming that the cooling solution is the same, is going to run that little bit quieter as well. On that topic though, the reference card for the Vega 64, I've heard a lot of bad things and that it, quote, sounds like a jet taking off. This though, I'm pleased to say, hasn't really had any of that. I mean, in certain situations the card definitely has spun up to slightly louder than I'd like, but in pretty much most games that I've tested, it's barely been audible. So if you have this under your desk, it's really not anything to worry about, especially if you're listening to music through speakers or headphones. Pressing on to performance though, and this is where things do get very interesting indeed. And the reason for this is when you bring up all the benchmarks, you can see that it's a fine performer and really does have a lot going for it. Even in 4K, while it's not going to be the absolute strongest card out there, it's still very, very impressive. And if you do lower things like anti-aliasing, grab yourself a FreeSync monitor, I think you're going to have an excellent, excellent experience, even with high settings at 4K. But where this card really shines though is 1440p. As if you've got an ultra-wide or just a bog standard 1440p monitor, this is almost the right amount of power when it comes to price to performance. When we look at the GTX 1080 though, it does outperform this in pretty much every test. And I'm sure a lot of people will be disappointed at this, especially when you look at the current pricing of Vega, which along with availability is a little bit all over the place. Comparing directly against the liquid cooled edition, as you'd expect, the liquid cooled, which is clocked slightly higher, does actually bring home the bacon with higher scores, but as that is significantly more expensive, I'm not really sure that that's going to be worth it for most people, though that card does run a little bit quieter and significantly cooler. We probably should also talk about overclocking though, and out of the box this will just come in the balanced mode, which is what I've used for all of these tests. You can enable the turbo mode and this will give you a little bit more performance, but to be honest it does increase the noise, and as you only get 1 or 2 frames a second more, I would probably leave it on the balanced preset, but obviously have a play around yourself to see what the best results for you are. And then if you do want to overclock it further, I gave it a go, and trying for 5% I got black screens immediately. And even going for a more modest overclock, I didn't really see any gains at all, unfortunately. I'm not saying you can't do it, because if you bump up the voltage, I'm sure you can probably get some stability at slightly higher frame rates. But if you're buying this and you're really hoping to overclock it really far, to be honest with you, I think you probably will be a little bit disappointed. Having said this though, the Vega 64 is definitely a great card, and the Strix solution that ASUS have put on it is doing a very good job of keeping it under control. The main issue for me really is just pricing and availability, as at the moment I couldn't tell you how much this costs because it's currently all over the place. So if you're looking at this and the card is more expensive than a 1080, there is almost no point buying it whatsoever, bearing in mind the 1080 is going to give you more performance in the majority of titles. Having said that though, obviously we have to take FreeSync into account, and if you're looking to pick up a new monitor, then chances are you're probably going to want it to be a FreeSync monitor with an AMD graphics card. So the pricing is going to come into it massively. So if you can get this for a very competitive price that's quite similar to a 1080 or ideally less, then it's definitely highly recommended and it's going to keep you going for years to come. But at this moment in time, when you can't even find it, let alone get it at a sensible price, it's incredibly difficult to recommend. But in terms of outright performance, this card does win the Whoa. I was about to give this an award, but editing this video, I really don't think I can right now. Pricing information hasn't even been given to me, let alone what the pricing for you guys will actually be. You've seen from the benchmarks that the 1070 Ti actually gets pretty close for around about the £420 mark, so anything that's a lot more expensive than that, it's going to be quite hard to justify. And for me to give this product, say, the Silver Award, it would almost be completely arbitrary in this case. It would mean nothing. You need to know whether you want a FreeSync monitor or specifically an AMD card. Because at the moment, in this particular space, I see very little reasons to buy the Vega 64 until the pricing gets properly settled. If they're selling out, as far as AMD are concerned, great. But for you guys, the consumers, you need to know what you're getting in terms of price and performance. And at the moment, I don't think this card at this price is going to be worth picking up. So I'm sorry to intrude and ruin the end of this video, but I don't think I can give this an award, and my previous decision I think would have been incorrect and unfair to both you guys and to ASUS. If you have enjoyed this video though, please hit the like button and subscribe and help me get to 100,000 subscribers. A massive thank you to ASUS though for sponsoring the channel, but of course as always this is my independent review. Let me know any thoughts you have down in the comment section below, especially about Vega 64 and its availability, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.